Chad, we have long said that Nick Saban would be perfect as the commissioner of college football because of his background. When he speaks, everyone listens.
Yeah.
Nick Saban would say we need someone with a law background.
Yes.
We have we want a coach. We want someone in football. We have both right now.
And one of the all-time kings of the press conference. Maybe our guest could kind of serve as press secretary at some point / legal consultant for the commissioner of college football.
Or he could just be the commissioner.
He could wear a lot of hats. He's wore a lot of hats in his past, too.
Derek Dooley joins us.
Yes.
Former SEC coach.
Tell you,
Let's go.
All my years, I never got more praise from two Tennessee guys in all my years. That was incredible. That made up for everything in the last 10 years right there. I appreciate it.
No one wants this job. No one wants to be commissioner of college football.
Well, I have to say it's almost laughable when people talk about we just need Nick Saban or one person to come in and tell everybody how to do it. And in some ways, it's insulting to commissioners like Greg Sankey and all these incredibly smart people trying to solve these problems. And I think really, I don't think people understand some of these built-in challenges that all these guys are facing in trying to reshape sort of this new landscape of college football. And it really boils down to two things. I mean, if you think about, number one, how many schools are in Division I, all right? But now they've gotten more autonomy in the football world. We've got it down to about 50 or 60 schools. But still, each one of those schools has different interests. And so whenever you talk about a rule, hey, we want to move the transfer portal to this, all Georgia cares about is how does it affect them. All Ohio State cares about is all Greg Sankey cares about is how does it affect the SEC. So building that consensus is incredibly difficult because you don't just have one autonomous governing body. But the bigger issue on top of all that is every decision you make now has to withstand a challenge from the courts. You're going to get sued. And so there's no collective bargaining. There's no sports league where everybody agrees to be a part of. So those are just monumental hurdles. And I've been the past year right in the middle of all this stuff. And when you get in the weeds of it, you really appreciate the challenges that all these guys are facing.
How much are you missing coaching, or are you missing it at all with this past year where you haven't been directly around a team every day?
There's a lot of parts I miss. I was in it for 28 years. And probably the biggest thing you miss really is the camaraderie you have day in and day out with the coaches and the players, and being around the kids. It keeps you young. There's a tremendous amount of energy every day. And that really is the part I miss more so than any games or any other award or anything you might get. Certainly game day's fun. It's stimulating, but there's nothing like being with the kids. But I will say this, I've really enjoyed this year. I actually watched a lot more college football than I ever have because I did some media on ESPN during the fall. And I've also been able to dive into all these issues, hopefully where I can be in some way of assistance in any way to help solve a lot of these problems college is facing right now.
And we're going to get into a lot of those issues with you here today, Coach. And the last 2 years of your coaching career, back with Coach Saban at Alabama, he's a guy who very publicly said, he was turned off by the fact that you lose a big playoff game, and then the first thing he's being confronted with is how much money guys are going to make to come back on the roster, and that's not really the way he wanted to operate. He ends up retiring. How difficult is it? Because you've been around both pre-NIL era and now post-NIL era to build a true culture and to instill your culture with the program while also dealing with the necessary part of it now being how much guys are going to get paid to stay on your roster.
Well, it was difficult before, and it's exponentially difficult now. It's funny because you say that. I witnessed firsthand. I had the benefit of being with Coach Saban. I called in the beginning at LSU, even though he was at Michigan State, but he really became Nick Saban at LSU. I was with him the first 5 years there, and then 2 years at Miami, but then the last 2 years at Alabama. And what Coach had just an incredible way of doing whatever he could to get a player there. He was a phenomenal recruiter, probably underrated as a recruiter. He acquired talent better than anybody. But then when they got there, he really bent the twig. I mean, he I don't want to say broke them, all right, but they took a step down and they had to earn their stripes. It was hard. It was difficult. They all came in with these high expectations, but he beat it out of them. All right. And then they became focused on developing day to day, getting better every day and doing it for Alabama. And then all of a sudden by year 2 or 3, all right, they would be these phenomenal players. You know, maybe the first year they played 10 snaps, maybe the second year, 25 snaps a game. And then by the third year, they were full-time starters. What happened in this new era was a freshman would come in, all right, all the expectations, hit the disappointment, all right, where normally they would stick through it, learn how to persevere, learn how to overcome adversity, learn how to grow as a player. But now, I can go to Ole Miss for $200,000 and start. I'm out of here. And so all of a sudden now, what happened, we saw was we still had tremendous players at the top, all right, but then all of a sudden, all that middle depth was gone, and then you went down to freshmen. And so his model was no longer going to be sustainable the way it was. Now, he was ready to adapt, and he would have adapted as good as anybody, but that part changed everything. Hell, I remember when I was at Tennessee, when you remember, we played Alabama. There were times when I'm like, oh, crap, they're bringing in the second team because those guys were better than the first teamers, you know. But that's all changed. And I'll tell you, I have so much respect for the coaches that are consistently doing it right now. Kirby's probably the best example at Georgia.
You mentioned depth. I haven't coached, but I've said like the NFL, we got the draft tonight. I don't think the same level of development's going into the league because of this. Because, you know, I'm hearing NFL coaches say, it's a good thing that I see a player that's been to 3 different places. I'm like, that can't be true because the coaches there have not developed them over the course of time. Like there's a plan in place when you recruit a player that's no longer being actually executed. Am I correct in this? Or is it more of a Cliff Notes version for a player now when you arrive at a university?
This really started back in, I think about when I went to the Dallas Cowboys in 2013. I was there 5 years. And at that time, you know, this is when players started coming out early.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was a new thing. And all of a sudden, there was this feeling that the players weren't nearly as developed as they were back when they would redshirt and be there 5 years. And so one of the appeals for me, I guess, was that I was in college and I was used to developing younger players, and that the NFL needed coaches that, you know, these guys were not coming in ready-made. They really had to spend several years developing within the NFL. And I think now that's even more so the case. You know, these guys learn how, what they're being schooled in more than anything is quickly picking up an offense and going out there and functioning. What they're not getting schooled in is a lot of the fundamentals. And it's hard even in the NFL to develop those, but those ultimately are what define great players. All the great players have tremendous talent, but they have with that an incredible grasp for the fundamentals, and they have a level of grit and toughness and ability to overcome adversity that I think the model in today's college football is not really developing like it used to.
We're definitely going to get to some of the stories today, but just you talking about that, Coach, got me thinking about a guy that you coached at Tennessee who is still remarkably in the NFL, Cordell Patterson. And he's played a number of different positions. And this is sort of the example we're talking about, right? Yeah. He came from junior college. He was with you in your program for 1 year, but he played all over the place at Tennessee, right? He was taking direct snaps, playing running back. You found a number of different ways to get him the football, and now that's exactly what he's done in the NFL, where he's played traditional wide receiver. He's played almost H-back, tight end, running back, different spots throughout his career. Is that kind of an example of maybe what a player could be if you find the right guy, even if they don't have those 3 or 4 years built in of development under one program?
Well, I think that's the true challenge of a coach is what does a guy do well and how can we feature that as best we can, game in and game out. And all the while, you continue to develop on the side. You can't wait until some guy's perfect.
I was at the game with a group of buddies. I remember. Yeah, the old Georgia Dome.
Yeah.
Yeah, before the new stadium was built.
Yeah, we went to that game.
Yep.
When he walked on campus, I think we were kicking off in 4 weeks. Okay, so think about that. And I went to Jim Chaney, our offensive coordinator, and I just said, listen, all right. And Cordell, it's hard enough for anybody to pick up an offense, but that wasn't going to be his strength, was, intellectually just picking up all these X's and O's.
Yeah.
All right. And I went to Chaney and I said, let me tell you something. Okay. I don't want to hear that the guy can't learn. I don't want to hear that he's not polished, and I don't want to hear any of that. All I care about is that guy better touch the ball 10 times against NC State. That's it. Figure it out. And if you can't figure it out, I will. But I don't want any excuses. The guy better touch the ball 10 times. And sure enough, it was one of our best wins, and he got MVP of the game. We ran a reverse. He did, we were flipping the ball to him, just creating ways to get on the field, do this. So sometimes coaches can overcomplicate things and say, well, it's, we have this really difficult offense, and you're really doing a disservice to the players. And I think the NFL has learned more and more. The NFL is notorious. I mean, my God, some of the play calls, it's like a dissertation. And these guys are used to just hearing Bobcat, and they know what to do. And so,
I would prefer that too. I would hate working with Sean Payton on that.
Yeah,
I had this great debate with Jason Garrett. I'm so close. Jason's one of my great friends, and he's incredibly smart. But, we had a real verbiage offense where, in his eyes, you were telling everybody what to do. All right. But hell, you never know which guy, those words were talking to. I mean, these guys came from systems where they just got one signal and they went and did it. And so it was a tough adjustment for these college guys, but we kept evolving, to try to really move our system toward what they can do. And I think all the schools are adapting. Coaches are great adapters. And, and I think you'll continue to see that in the NFL.
When you see the story of Nico Iamaleava at Tennessee, what's the first thing you think about in the aftermath of this story? Is it a cautionary tale? Has it given other coaches and ADs license to maybe speak out more about guys asking for too much above market value, like we've seen with Fran Brown at Syracuse and Hunter Yurachek now at Arkansas? What's the biggest takeaway for you when you see that story?
My first takeaway is it's never what everybody thinks it is. Okay. Everybody has tried to shape this story into this guy. It was a money grift gone bad. And Nico wanted a bunch of money. He made a bad decision. And so he lost some in the meantime. And whenever you have a breakup of that kind of a starting quarterback in a program, there's always more to it. And the reality is probably both sides had some issues with the relationship for whatever it is. All right. Nico, if you believe what they say, had issues maybe with how are we going to build the offensive line? How am I going to get receivers? What's my quarterback development? All fair concerns. All right. And, I think the timing of it is indication that it wasn't just a money grift. He probably didn't see some steps. And he decided, you know what? I'm not happy here. I'm going to go somewhere else. On the flip side, Tennessee, I'm sure, wasn't all pleased with Nico in many ways. Maybe they weren't sure if he was the quarterback that could lead him to a championship. Maybe there was leadership issues. I don't know. Maybe he was asking for too much money. I don't know what the issue is. But I think it's, I didn't think it was that big a deal that everybody made it out to be. Players and coaches, sometimes it doesn't work out, and kudos to him for taking less money and going somewhere else. I think more importantly, guys, because the irony in all this is Tennessee's involved. And if you remember, Tennessee was really the catalyst for how all this started.
Yeah.
Because I think we all need to understand a little bit the history of how we got here. You remember that old quote, I have met the enemy and he is us. All right. That's this hyper-competitive, zero-sum college football world has really incentivized programs to stretch every gray area of any legal issue to try to get a competitive edge. Okay, so think about it. And I'm going to just bear with me here.
Yeah.
I'm going to be as quick as I can. But forever, the NCAA, there were two things that were just no-nos. You couldn't go pay a player to come to your school, inducing, and a player couldn't make money off of his name, image, or likeness. That was just, they were protected in this world of amateurism. So what happens? 2015, 2021, a couple of cases, O'Bannon, Austin. I don't want to go into all the details, but essentially, they took this idea of amateurism and said, this is a problem with antitrust, right? This isn't going to fly. You could see it coming. I mean, we were right in the middle of it. Like, oh, what does that mean? So then what happens? State laws start saying players can be compensated for their name, image, and likeness. Now, what was the intent? Okay, it was if somebody can get on a commercial, all right, because he's a good player and get paid for it, he should have that right. Everybody sort of agreed with that. All right. So once all these state laws happened, the NCAA was in a panic. So they just said, hey, we got to make it okay across the board. All right. Name, image, and likeness became allowed. Then what happens? Here we go. The enemy, right? Masters, coaches, masters at finding the edge. So they create these collectives that are essentially money laundering operations, all right, to where we now are taking money that we just funnel into LLC or, whatever company, and now we're going to pay players under this scam name, image, and likeness, meaning, hey, Jimmy, post this one time on your Instagram and we'll pay you $400,000 for the year. All right. Well, that's not what the original intent was. Okay. So, but technically, we're still not supposed to be paying players to get them to come. And so then what happens? After 2 years of total chaos, it was right in the middle of it. It was like there was no rules. So we're just paying these guys. Is this what we're doing? After 2 years, the NCAA lets this go on, and then they develop a spine and say, we're going to go after Tennessee. Why? I have no idea. I mean, everybody was off the rails.
Yeah.
All right. They go after Tennessee, and Tennessee and Virginia sue, saying, hey, it's a violation of antitrust. Players should be able to negotiate during recruiting and that sort of thing. And so then pay for play started. And understand this, there's not one court case that basically gave the green light to colleges to pay for play. All right, we just allowed it. We kind of created it on our own. So here we are. And now we got to find a way to sort of put some guardrails around it. And that's what the House settlement's going to hopefully speak on.
And that's perfect segue into what I was going to ask you about next, the House settlement. What does that mean for the future of college football? And is this step one in putting the guardrails up that the sport needs?
Well, Greg Sankey said it. This is just a step. All right, but it's an important step. If one thing happens, okay, just so everybody understands, we're going to share, we got this pot of money that we're going to share to our players. I think this is what confuses a lot of people. All right, let's call it 22 million. Well, what they're saying is 75 to 80% of that money is going to go to football, right? So if I'm Kirby Smart and I got $15-18 million, now I can apportion it however I want. I can pay the quarterback this much, the right tackle. I can pay the center nothing. Probably won't happen. All right. But every school can choose how they want to do it. You can go pay your basketball team more, whatever. Now, here's the catch. You can still have NIL on top of third-party NIL on top of the revenue share. So these payments now, the revenue share comes directly from the university. But it allows a Livy Dunn to go do a deal with Vori or whatever that company is. All right. The key to this is schools will inevitably try to circumvent the cap by doing more fake NIL, but they're putting this enforcement agency to make sure, and a clearinghouse to make sure these deals are legitimate, market driven. That's the key. If they can enforce this thing and nail it down, we might get some stability in how we're operating. Now, know this though, two big issues that House does not talk about. One is the transfer portal, which is an absolute mess. All right. And then the second one is this eligibility issue. I mean, it's ridiculous. Pavia, I mean, he wants to play till he's 42. All right. And it's killing high school players. I mean, these guys are taking up roster spots. And all of a sudden think about if your son was a senior in high school and you got all these seventh year players that won't move their ass out of college. There's no spot for you. And so those are two big issues they're going to have to address after House.
And the Pavia one is different from the latest lawsuit in the state of North Carolina with the Duke and North Carolina and NC State players. They're basically just arguing, hey, we can make money here at Duke playing linebacker, and you're stopping our ability to make money with these eligibility issues.
The guy wants a seventh year.
Yeah, they didn't even go to junior college or anything. You know, Pavia's argument is you shouldn't count junior college years against college eligibility. That's fine. That's a debate for another day. But the guys at North Carolina and Duke, coach, are just saying, just let us keep playing and making money. And I don't know how that's going to work.
Yeah, it won't. And, you know, this goes back to withstanding all these legal challenges. And I think one of the, you know, I listened, I don't know if you guys saw it, but the Power Four commissioners had a Washington day where they're up there lobbying. And I listened to a podcast with them for 30 minutes, and everything they said was incredible, on point, intelligent. The hard part is it's hard to really summarize it in a nutshell, what the issue is and what they need from Congress, protection-wise. And so consequently, they can't get the public behind it and they can't get Congress behind it. But they have to be able to create some rules to enforce this uniquely American institution of college athletics, all right, and not have to sit here and fight lawsuits all the time. It's a real challenge. And, you know, there's no easy answers. But, I mean, really, it's two things. It's either you get Congress to help you, all right, or you collectively bargain and you create some rules, neither of which is happening right now. I think the House settlement is going to be viewed as a collective bargaining instrument, but that doesn't solve the issues on eligibility and transfers.
So I'm an idiot here, and I'm trying to figure out why there won't be more lawsuits to come on this angle, on the clearinghouse and the fair market value. Because if I'm thinking here, if a car dealership wants to pay me $1 million for an autograph session, who is the clearinghouse to say that's not fair market for me? That's my market. That's my value, not the guy down the street who can't get that, but I can. Isn't that going to be allowed based on other rulings we've seen?
Well, it's a great question. Okay, but look, one of the great benefits I had I was in the NFL 9 years. Okay, yep. So I witnessed this disgrace of an enforcement agency, the NCAA, all right, all these years, which basically incentivized coaches to cheat because they had no clue what was going on. The suit wouldn't even happen for 5 years. We still hadn't dealt with the Michigan signal stealing. When are we going to talk about that? After Harbaugh wins 5 years in the league and a Super Bowl champ? I mean, it's ridiculous. Yeah. Okay, so on one hand, you got that. But on the other hand, the NFL, where very strict rules, okay? If you talk to a rookie past 5 o'clock in the spring, your ass is in trouble. And if they come investigate, they walk in, they interview a bunch of people, and then you get a letter, and that's it. I mean, the enforcement has to be swift and severe. And so to your question is when you come in, and a car dealership's done nothing like this to anywhere in the past. Right. There's no similar market that shows that this is a real benefit for their business. And you got to say, no, we're not doing that. And until schools get punished for circumventing the rules, they're going to stay incentivized to break them. All right. That's been my beef with college athletics all the time is everybody says, well, coaches are going to cheat. They're only going to cheat because you don't punish them. I mean, they're no different than kids. I mean, there's no consequence. And until there's a consequence, and they need to come down hard on this clearinghouse to make sure schools don't circumvent the cap. Otherwise, we've accomplished nothing.
And Chad, they fed that the car dealer feels like a mini owner of the team by doing this.
Well, and another owner of the team, the Collective, which Derek was talking about. And we had our buddy Clay Travis on the show yesterday, and he brought up the strong likelihood that Spire Sports, the Tennessee Collective, could go after legally the money they've paid to Nico Iamaleava because he went to UCLA, because the wording of the contract about having his NIL rights while in school. Arkansas, Hunter Yurachek came out and said, I support our collective going after Madden Iamaleava in his money. Do they have rights in this? When they start suing in their local courts, I think the Fayetteville court system is going to be pretty favorable to the Arkansas collective. I think Knox County is probably going to be favorable to Spire Sports. Do you see that as kind of a next step the way Clay does?
Well, and it's really not, they're not even going to need local courts because these guys are going to start having clear contracts, just like every other relationship, coach to school, where you engage, you say, I'm paying you for this service. If you break the contract, here's the penalty. All right, whatever it is. Now, there's two questions. Should they do it and will they do it? All right, should they? Absolutely. If they want to control this constant movement and total disregard for loyalty and commitment or honoring a contract, then they absolutely should enforce it and get their money back. Will they is a better question, all right? Because think about this, guys, about college athletics. Again, how it differs from the pros, all right? These guys are playing with not their money. It's somebody else's money. All right. And their only objective is to win and keep their job. All right. And so if they're going to be avoiding, on one hand, they don't want this perception that they're coming down hard on the players. Maybe it'll have a bad taste for other players to come to their program. Here's a more important question that I think is going to happen is, okay, let's say we have an elite player. All right. And, let's just say Alabama says, hey, we want to sign you to a 2-year deal. And then if you leave after 1 year, you're going to owe us this amount for the buyout. But then all of a sudden, Mississippi State says, hey, we're going to sign you for the 2-year deal, same amount, but we're not putting a buyout in. All right. You see the issue? It becomes a negotiating piece. All right. Like, I'll just tell you right now. Most coaches, like me, when they were coming up, had massive buyouts. They couldn't leave. Nick Saban, he never had a buyout because he had leverage in the negotiation. And so those are issues that are going to be coming into play. But I think absolutely they need to enforce some of these terms when a guy just egregiously breaks a contract, when there's no really any discussions going forward. Most of the time, there's going to be a mutual breakup.
This has been great. This may be the most straightforward interview I've ever heard from Derek Dooley. Like, there's no discussion of combing of the hair or world wars or tariffs or anything.
Yeah, this has been incredible. Do you still have the orange pants?
I actually do. I don't know where they are, but
I mean, you could auction those off. If you got a charity close to you at some point, you could auction those off for a lot of money. Some Tennessee fans
they might go for $5. I mean,
not if the collective got their hands on it.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, man.
No, listen, I love talking college football.
Me too.
I love talking football. These are really complex. They're not easy issues. It's easy for all of us to criticize, but I hope we get it right. This has been a part of my life forever. And it's just when you have an unregulated industry that has no governing authority, it's just going to take some time. And so hopefully our leadership can get there.
Well, this has been incredible. We definitely want to get you on again shortly and maybe throughout the season. I was telling Hutton, one day I'm listening, driving around, coaching my daughter in softball on a college football Saturday, turn on the radio, and it's a Westwood 1, I believe, like in-between game, pregame show, and it's Derek Dooley and Matt Sims on a show together. And I'm like, man, that is not the coach-quarterback combo I was expecting to hear. But we've had Matt on the show, and he's terrific.
He's great, too.
And now we've had Derek Dooley on the show, and he's terrific. So it was a great duo for broadcasting.
I had so much fun. It was ESPN radio game day where we would be on for 4 hours. I never thought anybody was listening to it, but just what you said. It's guys that are driving.
Yep.
All right. Maybe you're going to your kid's game and you want to know what's going on. And we're just talking about the games going on. But it was great to reconnect with Matt. He is just awesome. I love him to death. We had a tough third year there, or his last year, my first year at Tennessee. But man, he is a quality person, one of my all-time favorites. And it was fun reconnecting. And we're going to be on the air again this year.
Outstanding.
I'll be listening.
Yeah, hopefully you're back on with us. We would love that. Come in studio with us, too. I don't know if you like moonshine, but moonshine's across the Mid-South. You can't go wrong with a little moonshine here.
Any excuse to get up to Nashville, I'm there.
Man. All right, good. We'll do it.
We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach.
All right, thank you, guys.
There he is. Derek Dooley.